being developed by Dart Command Central is quite simply a game changer for local, state, and national animal response agencies. This technology will help us coordinate animal care, collect necessary data and costs, and manage our volunteers and emergency shelters, all toward our end goal of keeping people and their animals together through crisis.
Right. Hi, everyone, and welcome. I am here today with Deb from Dart Command Central. Incredible team. They're always ready to jump into action when communities need support the most when it comes to disaster relief and your animals. Um, we're really excited to learn more about the heart and hustle behind their work. Deb, we have her here on Zoom. Thank you for joining us today. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about your mission, the mission behind Dart Command Central, how you ended up doing what you do today, and really kind of, I guess, what inspired it?
Sure. The mission is to help communities be better prepared for disasters, specifically vulnerable populations that have pets. Because one of the things that we've learned over the years, pretty much since 2006, when Katrina happened, is when people can't take their pets with them, they're inclined to not leave, making it more dangerous for them, their pets, and first responders. So, one of the things that we're trying to do is to help educate communities before the disaster about what they can do and be better prepared to uh, know what to do, and then to help teams that are focused on running pet shelters to have the software that they need to streamline their workflow so that they can focus on the care of pets and not paperwork.
Understood. And you mentioned you educate these folks, and you also help teams that run these pet shelters. How does that work exactly? So if I was interested in joining your effort, what would I do?
Well, as an individual, the first thing I would do would be to suggest that you see if there's a team in your area, a disaster response team already, because mostly what we focus on is trying to help those teams and then also communities to be prepared for disasters. So, for example, I live in Vermont and I'm working with my town to help them establish their emergency management plan specifically to help the community be better prepared because the last 2 years we've had massive flooding in July, and it's quite devastating, particularly for people who are vulnerable populations as well as the animals that they care for. So, as an individual, um, it would be more likely for you to get engaged with either your community or with a team who does the responding. And what we do is we provide the software, and we're working on a training module right now to help um, volunteers learn what it takes to run a shelter for an emergency shelter. Now, this is not like the Humane Society shelter. This is literally a pop-up experience. Oftentimes um, there's a specific location that community has designated as a location for pets. Sometimes it's pets only, sometimes it's pets and their owners. One of the things we've learned from areas that have a lot of these situations, like in Louisiana, they have found that doing communal shelters is far more effective because the animals aren't as stressed and the people aren't as stressed when they get to be in the same shelter together.
Understood. I love that you do this for animals. I mean, they tend to get overlooked when it comes to disasters, right? So it's such a cool thing that you guys have a software to help pull that together. And tell us a little bit about that software. Is it a desktop application? Is it a website that we can go to?
Well, we are working on um, having it's a PWA, personal web app. So we're working on having an Android and an Apple version that you can download and put on any device, but you can also access it through a browser. Now, you can go to the URL, but you can't actually create a team. I'm the only one who can do that. That way we can make sure that the people who are using the software are actually getting trained appropriately so that we don't just have people popping up emergency shelters without any actual understanding of what they're doing. Because believe it or not, running an emergency pet shelter is actually there's a lot of details that you don't think about. And I got involved in this because in 2018, a friend of mine had started a local team here in Vermont, and so I went to her meeting. And the reason why I designed the software, I've been building custom web applications since 93 as a profession. And when I got to this one session we had with the team, she handed me a stack of paper and she said, "This is how we do intake and document the care of pets." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, this is like 20 pieces of paper for each pet? Really?" I was just literally blown away by the fact that this was done on paper, and I thought, "What? Why?" And nobody could answer that question. Well, I can tell you the answer because volunteers who manage emergency pet shelters do not have the resources that they need to be able to support their efforts, much less pay for software. So I worked with my team for about 3 years, created a prototype, and then applied for a grant from State Farm. They gave us a grant. We built a beta version of the software, and then that software beta version ended up being used in Vermont in 2023 during one of the massive floods we had that summer, where they cared for 72 pets for 26 days, tracking over 1,600 no, excuse me, 1,700 volunteer hours for that experience. And
That's
then
incredible.
yeah, and so after that, it was sort of interesting, funny, and unexpected. But when I did a debriefing with my team, they were like, "Oh my gosh, Deb, we've got to do." And then they had this like huge laundry list of things that they wanted.
Yeah.
And so I took the laundry list and I applied for more grants and we got some more funding and we launched it officially in March. So the name of the software is the Emergency Animal Shelter App, or EASApp.
EASApp Emergency Animal Shelter app, and
Yeah,
available on both iOS and Android. That's so
working
cool
on it.
that you innovated a solution to all that paperwork. You're a developer at heart, an engineer.
Well, it was one of those things where I had been doing this for so many years, and finally it was like, well, here is a really good cause, and something that I can actually get behind, that it has no money. I'll just be really frank with you. It is really hard to get funding for it because there's a lot of disaster grants out there, but they're assuming that you have a physical location that you're trying to address a problem. And so finding money has actually been really challenging because there aren't any specific grants for writing software for volunteers. So I had hoped to be able to apply for some congressional funding, but considering that the current administration is trying to eliminate FEMA, um, that has gone by the wayside for sure. So what I'm trying to do now is find some corporate sponsors who would be interested in supporting what we're trying to do as we grow. We have right now several states that have teams that are starting to use the software for training as well as for being able to deploy when a disaster strikes. Because one of the things that I discovered working with my team is that you can never practice too much. And we had been meeting every month since 2018 until the July flood of 2023. And because of all of that practice, my team was actually quite prepared for the disaster, and yet they still had a really steep learning curve. So this is not something that you can just like willy-nilly put together, because there are scenarios that you don't think of everything the first time. So they had that experience, and then in December of 23, there was another flood that they had more opportunity to do. And then 24, we had even more flooding. So we've actually had a lot of experience, and they have given me an enormous amount of feedback. But I feel like what we've created is something that's a very solid solution. And my vision behind being a nonprofit was that because volunteers don't have financial resources, I wanted to be able to give them the emergency shelter at no cost. And so that's why I decided to be a nonprofit, because I spent 2 years trying to figure out how do you build a business where you give your primary product away? Well, you don't. Uh,
A nonprofit.
right, exactly. You become a nonprofit. So
Yeah,
I thought being able to find funding would be a little bit easier than it has been, but you
yeah.
know,
I
lessons
mean,
learned.
yeah, it is not an easy road. It's definitely not. And that's definitely why we have this alliance, because we can't do it alone. And in fact, while you were saying that, I was thinking through what your problem is with raising money. And I was thinking about a grant that I just encountered the other day. It was, I think it was NSF Civic Innovation. And I would have to send you the information outside of this interview. But basically, what that's for is it's for teams developing community driven technical innovations, whatever that might be, to improve emergency response, resilience,
Great.
etc.
I would
So I
love to see that one.
absolutely, absolutely, I think that would be something that, it's at least worth looking into. And then you mentioned FEMA and private grants, so we're here for you. I'd love to know, what you kind of mentioned, I guess, a memorable moment where you had those major floods out there. Have there been any additional, memorable moments where the app that you've created helped save lives, an animal or a human?
Well, one of the things that I had been telling my team prior to the flooding of 23 was that they kept going to the farmers market and educating those people. And I said, that's great, helping them understand what to do, asking them for money, but those are not the people who are going to show up at the shelter.
Yeah.
You really need to figure out how you want to connect with the people who are going to actually show up at the shelter when something happens.
Yes.
So when the flood of 23 happened, what they learned was that it was primarily vulnerable populations that showed up, and many of them had animals that needed a lot of medical care. And so one of the things that we ended up doing, because, and you might find this peculiar, I found it peculiar, but they said, we really need to track urination and feces. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I gave them the ability to do that in the beta version. And because of that, they were actually able to track the urination of a male cat. Well, actually, the lack of it. And because of this, the people who were running the shelter knew that if there was too much time between the urination, that there was probably something serious going on. Turns out that cat had a blockage, and they got emergency medical care to recover, take care of the blockage, and actually save the cat's life. So,
Incredible.
um, yeah, and like, okay, I would not have known that. Did you know that? That's just not one of the, I don't have a cat, so that wasn't something that
Yeah.
was aware of. But because of that, and because of the need, because the normally a shelter is 3 to 5 days, but this was 26 days long. And the
Yeah.
reason it was so long was because people were completely displaced, and they had nowhere else to go.
Right.
So you had the people in the Red Cross and the animals in the shelter. And so it took a long time to get the pieces back together so that families could get back together with their pets.
Yeah.
And because of that, one of the things that they ended up challenged by was a change in medication while they were there. So we created a whole section on medication and documenting if you needed to change it, what was changed, who did it, when they did it, what exactly was changed, and all of that is documented in their profile. And at
Yeah,
the end of a when the animal is released to go home, all of the care that that animal has been given is generated in a PDF, and it shows the owner exactly what care the animal received while they were in the shelter.
that's incredible. I love that. Your animals are like kids. Yeah, I have a cat actually, and she's like my little kid. She's just a baby, and if we had a natural disaster and we had to worry about our human family, the cat is going to be needing help. And it's nice to know that there's actually people out there that care and that know there's a gap there and has a solution to actually help fix it. So, thank you. Thank you for having this. I'm curious about volunteers though, because I'm personally very interested in what you're doing, and maybe there's some alignment there down in our area. We have hurricanes here in Florida all the time, and I think what would it be like if we collaborated to expand what you do down here, right? So I mean, I think these are things we can talk about and see where it can go.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
There are state teams and there are local teams, and there are some states that have no teams. So, for example, one of the things I had a group last summer of high school volunteers who were wanting to help, and I asked them to identify all of the teams that they could find on social media through research, um, and they created a map. And we have teams in almost every state, except there are like three states that don't actually have any animal teams. I think, and I'm not going to say which ones they are because I don't want to be wrong. Um, but I was astonished that, there are actually states that don't have teams. Now, here in Vermont, the state doesn't deal with animals directly. We have a nonprofit that manages that. But, like, for example, in Delaware, the state has a state team. Massachusetts has volunteer teams. New Hampshire has a state team. Everywhere in the country, they do it differently. And let me tell you how much joy that is to try and build a system where everybody does it differently. So it's got to have a certain amount of flexibility, but at the same time, it also has to be incredibly user friendly because 90% of the volunteers are retired. And
Right.
so they're not technically savvy. It needs to be super easy to use.
Yeah, and that was actually where I wanted to go with this. Is I want to try to pull this together. For those that have never heard about your application and for those that might want to get involved, where would they start? So, would they contact you, Deb, and then,
Sure.
work on they would. Is there another, could they visit your site and sign up through your site that way to volunteer and you'd reach out?
They can go to dartcc.org.
Okay.
We do have the ability to contact us directly. And I also have this data about different states. So, for example, if you said you were in a specific geographic area in Florida, I might encourage you to connect with, because there's a couple of different teams down there. Um, if you wanted to volunteer and get connected with them, but it may be where you are, there isn't a team. So, um, if you don't actually have a team, then one of the things I would encourage you to do is to reach out to your um, state veterinarian, because they're the ones who will know where the teams are within your state, if there are teams, and then help you connect with those people. If you don't actually have a team in your region, then we can absolutely work with you to learn about what it takes to set up a shelter, um, with our turning module that we're working on right now and hope to have it completed by the end of the summer. So it's it's an enormous amount of work to help a team get ready, but there are things that you could do meantime to learn more about it.
Right. No, I understand that. That makes sense. So I guess to finalize that piece, if I wanted to, I'm down here in Florida. If there's not a team and I want to assemble a team, I'm gonna reach out to you. What would be the process from that point? Like the step by step. Is it really easy to become to create my own team in Florida, or do I need to collaborate with any?
You know, each state is different.
Yeah.
And I'll just tell you that. It depends on how you want to organize it. For example, here in Vermont, it's a nonprofit organization that was started, the Vermont Disaster Animal Response Team, VDART is what
Mhm.
we call them for short because that's a really long name. Um, and that's a nonprofit um, organization, whereas New Hampshire has a state run team and they get volunteers around the state.
Okay.
So I don't know if Florida has I don't know if Florida has a state-run team or not. I don't think they do, but I could help you find that information. So what I would suggest would be to reach out to me at dartcc.org. We've got a couple of different ways of connecting with us. If you're interested in seeing a demo of the software, we do actually have a way for you to sign up and get a demo of the software to see what it looks like if you happen to be a team already that doesn't know about our software. We do offer it at no cost. We are also always eager to get support because we do actually have hard expenses. So while my goal is to offer this at no cost to the volunteer teams, we have to pay for hosting and, all of those other joyful fees that come along with running a nonprofit organization, as you well have known.
Yes,
It's
there's a
not
lot.
cheap. Just because you're nonprofit doesn't mean there are no expenses.
That's a very true statement. Yes. If you could leave your audience with one message about your software and what you're hoping to achieve long term and short term, what would it be?
Disasters are becoming more and more frequent. Preparedness is the best way to know what to do and to ensure that you, your family, and your pets are prepared and that your community has a plan and you know where to go when disaster strikes. How is that?
I love it. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. That was an on the spot question. So,
That
uh,
really was. I had to think about that. But in all seriousness, and the other thing is that if you are somebody who has resources, figure out who in your community is vulnerable and make sure that they have the resources that they need so that when disaster strikes, they're prepared. Because those are the folks that tend to not have the means to address preparedness in some ways, but also may not have, like I'm thinking of some of my neighbors who are elderly
yeah.
and I know they have pets. Um, what are they doing if they get trapped like we were last year, where you couldn't go down the road because there was no road? The road was washed out. It was completely gone from July 10th through the week before no Thanksgiving. Um,
Wow.
I could not drive down the hill. Um, so fortunately, I'm blessed. There's another way out. But, what about my neighbors who don't have the mobility, or maybe
Yeah,
they've got issues with, there's just a ton of different things. That's why thinking about it before it happens makes it so much easier to know what to do. Always have your go bag ready. And
versus
that
panicking.
means for yourself as well as your family members and those of you who have pets, make sure you have a go bag for them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You can never control when disaster strikes. And it would definitely be nice having a plan. Going into something like that would be scary for a lot of people. And I can envision a panic session, for some if you're not prepared. So that's really cool that you guys do that. Deb, Hearing about that work you're doing, first of all, it's amazing, especially with the animal shelter coordination app. I love that idea. It's so innovative, creative. It's just so cool. It aligns with our mission at Relief Alliance of stepping in where help's needed most. And these people are going through a disaster. These pets are their kids, basically, right?
Yep.
Um, that really does align with us, and it's very heartfelt. From your perspective, how do you think Relief Alliance can support or partner with what you're doing, either now or in the future? Where do you think we'd step in to benefit you the most?
Spreading the word is probably the thing I do. That's not my strong suit. Let's just say that. I'm a software developer. And
Yes.
I have a huge heart for animals. You put those two together and you get EASApp. Um, Spreading the word and trying to get people to see the value of what we're doing is probably the weakest link that I have. I'm not very good at that until I get into a one-on-one situation. And do you know how many one-on-one situations I would have to do to make the impact that we need to have? So being able to just share what we're doing in a way that, I would love for Rachel Maddow to do an interview with me. I'm sort of being funny there, but I don't know how to express or find the resources to be able to um, communicate what it is that we're trying to do and how this can be valuable for so many communities. So I'm just doing it one person at a time, which is very, very slow.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So you're really right now, you have the app, it works, you've proven it out. It's
Yep.
already been through a couple disasters.
Yep.
Now it's how do we brand ourselves to get noticed by the public? How do we know, how do we make sure that people in all these states know we're here to help? And how do we get them to know it to the point where they know it's free, they know it's something that they can use, and how do we spread the word? So, do you hold events I mean, what do you do on your end actually to gain exposure on your brand and grow your brand?
Well, there's an organization called NASAP, which is the National Alliance of Animal Emergency. It's got a really long name. TheNASAP.org is the
Yeah,
easiest way to describe it. That is the organization that works with state agencies to ensure that the states are collaborating to address animals in disaster.
yeah,
But that's at the state level.
right.
And the challenge is that there is no organization nationwide for volunteers who do all of the work. So you've got in almost every state, you've got a state agency, generally the Department of Agriculture, probably the state veterinarian is at the top, and then they have support for certain kinds of things. But then when a disaster strikes, just like the Red Cross,
Yeah,
we are the Red Cross for animals, if you think about it that way.
okay. So, okay, and do you hold like I mean, do you hold any events at all, or is this it's a piece of software, so I'm
Right.
wondering.
Well,
Yeah.
what I was trying to get to with the NASAP folks, they have a conference every 2 years. I went to the first conference in 22, um, and I took wireframes of the software to describe what I was gonna do. I was fixing to do it, right? Hadn't done it yet, but I was fixing to do it. Then last year I went and demoed, and what was really interesting was that one of the women in the audience had actually used the software in Vermont in 2023. She works for the International Fund for Animal Welfare. IFAW is the name of the organization. So
Yeah.
she had actually experienced the beta version, and I had everybody play with the version that we had at that point. And she was just like, wow, I can't believe how much of a difference you've done here. So, in terms of getting it at the state level, I'm trying to do it that way. But in
Yeah,
terms of being able to reach out to all of the teams within the country, that's a lot harder because a lot of them went underground during COVID.
yeah. I
Underground
mean,
means they dissolved.
is there a database with all their names that they have to sign up anywhere at one point in time? Do you know of?
Are you talking about for the conference or
No, for finding volunteers and the
nope,
folks that you're really trying to target.
nope, there is no national database.
Okay.
I'm working on that.
Yeah. Well, on our end, what we can do, we have this interview. In the end, we'll edit it, make sure that you have it. You can use it in your marketing. We'll do a press release on your organization, your software. And it will also lead to this video. In addition to that, if you have any events that are coming up, we will gladly promote them. If you're looking for volunteers, we can try to help you recruit that. Um, we have an exclusive group on Facebook, which is really is starting to become quite valuable. It's growing over time. We started in 2024. We have new nonprofit organizations joining every week. And the more that join, the better, right? We can't do this kind of work alone. None of us can. And that's what the network's for. We're just here to help each other. So if you're recruiting volunteers, that's your network. This is the alliance. These are just like family, right? This is really what we're trying to grow it into and want it to feel like that. So if you need something, don't hesitate to just simply reach out and ask. If we can help,
Okay.
we absolutely will. And our members, we all join with that in mind. How do we help each other succeed in our missions? We all serve a similar mission to some degree. I mean, there's differences, of course, right? But we all serve folks in need here in our country and within our communities. So thank you for all that you do and all that you've done. It's so cool meeting another developer who has built something so cool. I'm a developer too, so it's really cool seeing somebody entrepreneurial like yourself pull this together. I've seen your software. It's really cool.
Well, thank you. It has been a labor of love. It's I think it's quite valuable to the folks who will be using it, and I hope that as we grow our training module, we will be able to help folks like you who are interested in volunteering
Yeah.
learn what you can do, learn how to find a team that you can either join or create so that we have teams all over the country. One of I applied for a grant a few months ago trying to address the situation in California. They were like, how would your software help? And so one of the things that we've requested is funding for an owner app so
Yeah.
that the owner could download the app and see where is the closest shelter, what kind of shelter do they have, and then basically reserve a spot and say,
Love
hey,
that.
I've got 3 dogs and 2 cats. Um, do you have room for me at your shelter? And be able to hold that spot for them for a period of time while they try and get to that location. So,
I love that idea actually, because if you're in a disaster, I can imagine that things are a bit chaotic and pre-planning. Versus if you just drive to the shelter and realize that there's no spots available, you're kind of in a panic going to all these places. Whereas if you could plan it in advance, give them a call and say, hey, or in your case, do a search with your software and see which ones do have availability, make a call or contact them through your software if you develop that capability, and then reserve that spot. Just streamlines it. I like that.
well, and it makes it easier for everybody planning so that, if, for example, in the fires, California has fires and there's a little bit different kind of experience than like a flash
Yeah,
flood, which is what we tend to get here in Vermont. A little
right.
bit harder to prepare in that same kind of way. So, and not to mention tornadoes, gracious, there's like zero planning for that. And all of a sudden you're devastated and it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? So,
Yeah,
there's a lot of different kinds of scenarios, not to mention, chemical situations where there's a disaster because of a man-made problem. What do
yeah.
you do then? So there's a lot of things that we as communities could help do to prepare our neighbors, and particularly those who are most vulnerable, who tend to be in the less ideal situations and the ones who were mostly impacted the hardest.
That's just the, we could have used you back when we had Hurricane Milton. I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
Relief Alliance. We went down to Fort St. Lucie, and they had that Spanish Lakes area. It was a neighborhood. Spanish Lakes is a neighborhood there, and it was a total disaster. They got slammed with a hurricane, sure, but simultaneously, while that was happening, multiple tornadoes touched down and just tore things to shreds. I mean, we went over there to try to help them with the relief, and it was just there's so much work that needed to be done. Roofs were destroyed, boats flipped over into houses, cars, you know, just all over the place. It was just a mess. It was a disaster. And, there wasn't any organization. You had a bunch of people just driving by asking, hey, can you help? There was just no organization. Weeks later, we went back and um, it still really wasn't organized. It was still, let's clean up, let's fix this roof, put a tarp over it. Um, but it was just happenstance that these folks had help. Pets, I don't even know what they did with their pets. The folks that lost their homes, no idea. But there wasn't your solution, right? And so I think there's a tremendous opportunity getting that out there, especially in areas like this where we're just about to approach hurricane season again, and these things happen every year.
Right. Well, and situations like Maui. I don't know if you're familiar with what happened with Maui, where there was a fire that took a whole big community,
Yeah.
and they also didn't have a plan. And so there were people trying to go back and rescue their animals. I mean, it was absolute chaos. So
Sad.
there's a huge need, and it's unfortunate. I mean, I'm probably way older than you are. I can tell by my hair I am.
No.
But when I was a kid, we had certain things that, we did the nuclear bomb was a big thing back then, and so we practiced hiding under our desks.
Yes.
I have no idea what communities do now. I know that active guns are a big deal, but like, are we thinking about disasters in a way that we should be, considering how frequent they are, how many there are? I think 2023 had $20 million disasters. That's a lot, you know.
That is a
And
ton.
if you there are charts that show you, back in the 70s it would be one every 5 years, and today it's like monthly. you know
Right.
the disasters are so frequent, and now they're so expensive. um anyway, I could talk disaster all day.
I have one more question for you, actually. I'm really curious. Like you told me like why you started this. What I'm really curious about is going a little deeper than that. Why did you start this? Like what in your life prompted you to get interest in developing a solution to help folks facing those challenges?
I was actually living in Austin, Texas when Katrina happened. I personally wasn't impacted, but so many animals came to Austin. They filled an arena in Austin with animals that they didn't know who they belonged to. This was sort of the beginning of, this is not okay. I can't imagine losing one of my dogs. It's just like it breaks your heart thinking about it. And I saw so many people unwilling to leave their homes because the emergency managers, people, the first responders wouldn't take their animals with them. And it's like, that's just unacceptable. So that's when the
Wow.
Pets Act came about, and Congress said, First responders, we have to have a way of dealing with pets." And so that's when the ball started rolling. It's it's still at the top of the hill. We got a long ways to go before we're actually
Yeah.
ready for disasters in the way that we need to be. And people don't want to take time because they're too busy doing stuff. They don't think that preparing for a disaster um, is important until, let's see, oh yeah, it happens. And then you're like,
Until it happens.
bummer, wished I
Yeah.
thought about that.
Right.
So,
And yeah.
so part of it just, it, to me, it's like, I understand it takes some time and some thought to think about how do you prepare for disaster. But, looking at now having lived through multiple flood seasons here in Vermont, um, I don't know how I can not address it, you know.
I love that. That's a really that's a great response to that question. It's very grabbing and touching. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, it's my reality. What can I say? And as a software developer, it's like, well, okay, what can I do? I'm not a first responder. I am not about to do that role.
As a software developer myself, I can tell you I can imagine how you feel. It's so cool to be able to invent products to start with, but when you couple that with a passion and a reason, I mean, it's so cool waking up every day, going to work, and knowing you're building something that you love to build, and you see the rewards from the folks, your users using it. And in your case, you're literally saving lives, right?
Yep.
And making things more streamlined, or trying to. Now we just need to figure out how do we get more people to know about your solution, and that's where we can come in and try to help. I mean, we're not going to be the one stop solves all, but we will gladly be your partner, and so will all of our members. We have um did you download the member guide from our site? I can't remember if I sent you the link, Deb.
Oh, you
You
did not
didn't.
send me that link.
All right, yeah. When we get done this, I'm gonna send you an email. It'll just be a link to our site. I don't think you submitted the alliance form too. It's just for our records. Just fill that out.
Sure.
Um, yeah, and then download the guide. It'll show you how to use our alliance. But what you can expect after this is what I kind of mentioned already. We're gonna have this done up. I will send it to you, and then I highly recommend that we meet again and plan on how we can serve you and try to get your name out there in a way that works for you.
Okay.
When we could go trying to spread the word, but it might not go anywhere without, because you've been doing this for a while for your own thing and we haven't. So you'll know better where our attention should be focused. I'm really excited to see your solution get out there. I would love to see this like the de facto solution for all states. I've seen your software, it's powerful. I hope that the folks listening to this interview do check it out if they're interested in saving animals and saving lives, and just stepping up for one another. Highly recommend going here and checking Deb's Dart Command Central software out. It is
Thank you. I
amazing.
appreciate that. We are on Facebook as well, and LinkedIn. Um, I'm I'm not social, I'm not savvy when it comes to social media. Um, I always tried to avoid it, but I appreciate that, and I appreciate your time and your interest. And I hope that we can figure out how to collaborate and help communities be better prepared because it's really all about preparation. Um, the more you know, the easier it is to think things through. And this isn't a huge time brain. We have cheat sheets that you can say, okay,
Yeah,
here are the things you need to think about in your go bag. Do you have a go bag? Sort of thing. Everybody in your family should have a go bag, and you want to make sure you've got your animal's medications, 4 days worth of food at least for your animal. So,
right.
when your hurricane season comes, make sure you've got a week's worth of food for your pet. Stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I actually just thought of one more question, Deb. So
Sure.
you're looking for financials basically. You're trying to find money through grants, but given that you're creating a piece of software as a developer, I know that's not easy to do all alone, especially the solution you have. I wonder if it would make sense to also potentially recruit volunteers to help develop that out.
Now, that's
It's
a
just
nice thought.
yeah.
Um, I I had somebody who was interested in trying to build an open source solution, um, but that didn't work out, and so I've been raising money to pay a team of developers. Because the other thing that I've learned about working with volunteers is that um, they're not as responsive to schedules. I mean that in a
Yeah,
nice way.
yeah, yeah. That's interesting. You say that. I mean, what have you found that works when
Well,
it
I've got a team that I pay to, I don't pay them like going rates. They give me a discounted rate. So,
right?
I'm grateful for that. But we've been collaborating and we use a tool called Trello as our main source of documentation so that because we have different schedules and we're in different parts of the country and I'm on the East Coast and some of them are in the Midwest and some of them are on the West Coast. So, trying to collaborate and do that as best we can.
Yeah.
Um, so, making sure and also making sure that the code is solid.
Yes.
And the team that I
Secure.
have is they're really I've been working with this group since 2013 professionally.
Yeah.
So I sweet talked them into helping me.
That's awesome.
How's
Well,
that for a sales pitch?
I love it. Another good one is Upwork. I don't know if you've ever checked it out, but if you ever need help and you have a little bit of money, but you don't want to spend what a normal developer would cost, or maybe you need some graphics designed for you, whatever you could think of. Yeah, you go into Upwork, post a job, you set the price, not them, you set the price, and then you'll get applications. People will those that are
Interesting.
interested, they'll apply to that job and they can work that job. And if you like working with them, you can continue working with them either, offline, if you got that type of relationship, or just continue on Upwork. But I've met a few folks that have really benefited from that, both for-profit organizations and nonprofit.
I've never heard of that. So thank you. I will look
Yeah,
into Upwork.
Upwork. Yeah, you set your price, and people come to you.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Good to know.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I am looking forward to, and well, Relief Alliance is looking forward to working with you, partnering with you. If there's anything we could do, just reach out. We're a phone call away, email away, and we'd be happy to be there for you. Deb,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
that.
We go, we feed a dog, we make a note. It's now on the front page of my phone. You just make a note, so and so has been fed, so and so has been walked. I can come in the morning and see that such and such dog has had a med change, but it's okay because they were done this morning, they need to be done at noon. It's just been amazing. I confess I was a little skeptical at having to put everything in as it was going on, and I was thinking, maybe we should just, write it down and then come and put it in. I'm totally on board, 100% with putting it in as we go. Everybody has been doing it. It's been great. Deb, you are my hero.
Thank
And
you.
Jake,
And